March 6th, 1944, 30,000 feet above Berlin. The morning sun cuts through a thin haze of contrails, hundreds of them twisting and crossing in the brittle blue. The drone of engines fills the heavens, four-engined B-17 seconds and B-24 seconds lumbering east, silver phantoms in tight formation. Below them, the capital of the Third Reich, its rail yards, factories, and airfields, glints cold and metallic in the light of day. From his cockpit, Oberleutnant Karl-Heinz Schnell of Jagerschwader 26 presses his gloved thumb against the starter of his Messerschmitt Pleyef 109G. Achtung, Feindverband, crackles over the radio. Enemy formation, dozens of them. The routine is familiar: intercept the bombers before they release, slice into the formation, and vanish into cloud. The Luftwaffe has done this dance for years, but something feels wrong. Through the shimmering horizon, Schnell spots the American bombers, and then, behind them, specks that move faster, cleaner, and higher than any escort he's seen before. They're not thunderbolts, not lightnings. These aircraft seem to climb effortlessly, cutting across the bomber stream with predatory precision. The German pilot leans forward, squinting. Was zum Teufel? He banks left and pushes the throttle forward. His 109 trembles as he climbs, engine howling in protest. The lead American fighter arcs upward to meet him, sleek, streamlined, its wings razor-thin and polished. The sun flashes off the spinner, yellow nose, black stripes. The Mustang. Schnell rolls away, startled by the speed. "They're over Berlin," he shouts into the radio. "Die Mustangs sind über Berlin." At that moment, the Luftwaffe knew. The sanctuary of the Reich's interior, once thought unreachable by escort fighters, was gone. The P-51 Mustang had arrived. Section 2. The long reach of the Merlin. The first to truly understand what the Luftwaffe was facing were the bomber crews, men who had once flown to Bremen or Schweinfurt with only a few hours of hope between takeoff and disaster. In the winter of 1943, the 8th Air Force bled for every mile over Germany. Without fighter cover, formations of B-17 seconds and B-24 seconds were picked apart by Focke-Wulfs and Messerschmitts. Losses were staggering. Entire groups vanished into vapor and flame before ever reaching their targets. Crews called it Black Week. Then, almost overnight, the tide shifted. January 1944. Airfields in southern England hummed with a new sound, a higher, tighter pitch. Rows of olive-drab fighters waited under dripping tarps, their fuselages marked with the white star and bar. The ground crews whispered about them like legend. The Mustang, powered by a British heart, the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine. Captain William Tex Hill of the 357th Fighter Group slid into the cockpit of his P-51 B Lu-4. The canopy sealed with a sharp metallic click. Ahead, the propeller blades blurred into a silver disc, and the growl of the Merlin filled the airfield. "Gentlemen," his flight leader radioed, "today we're going all the way in." Hill glanced down at his fuel gauges. With the new drop tanks slung beneath the wings, his range stretched beyond 1,600 miles, enough to reach Berlin and back. For the first time, bomber crews would not fly alone into the dark heart of Germany. At 20,000 feet, condensation streaked the wings as the Mustangs joined the bombers near Hanover. Below, the German countryside flashed by in patches of snow and forest. The Merlin's hum was smooth, relentless, confident. "Bandits, 11 o'clock high," came the call. Out of the haze, a swarm of Bf 109 seconds clawed their way toward the formation. The American fighters broke from the bombers in perfect formation, one smooth dive, throttles wide open. The speed was shocking. The P-51 seconds descended like hawks, their 6 50-caliber Brownings blazing. Within minutes, the sky was chaos, tracer lines, spiraling contrails, smoke. German pilots cursed over the radio as the new enemy cut through their ranks. The P-51 could climb with them, turn with them, and most fatally stay in the fight for hours longer than any thunderbolt or lightning. By the time the bombers reached the outskirts of Berlin, the Luftwaffe's interceptors were already in disarray. Hill's squadron roared past the flak bursts and dove straight toward Tempelhof's runways, strafing parked fighters as smoke rose in black columns. For the first time in the war, American pilots looked down upon Berlin from the cockpit of a single-seat fighter. When the Germans recovered the wreckage of a downed Mustang days later, engineers at Daimler-Benz were reportedly stunned. "Es ist unmöglich," one muttered, running a hand along the wing route. Impossible, yet there it was. A liquid-cooled Merlin engine, a British design perfected by American hands, giving the Allies an aircraft with speed, altitude, and endurance beyond anything in the Luftwaffe's inventory. The sanctuary of the Reich was broken. Section 3. The Fall of the Eagles, April 11th, 1944. The air above Leipzig trembled with violence. Dozens of black plumes curled into the cold morning sky, the remains of what had once been Germany's proud air defense. On the ground, the Luftwaffe's forward command scrambled to understand how, in mere weeks, their once dominant Jagdgeschwader were being bled white. Inside a reinforced bunker near Wittenberg, Major General Adolf Galland, veteran ace and inspector of fighters, stood hunched over a wall-sized map of Europe. Coloured strings traced bomber routes from England to Munich to Berlin to the oil fields of Leipzig. Red pins marked losses. There were too many. "They come from the west, refuel, and still they escort to Berlin," one aide reported, voice tight with disbelief. "These Mustangs, they never turn back." Galland exhaled, cigarette trembling between his fingers. He had seen the enemy's new machine up close. Fast, elegant, merciless. "Ja," he said quietly. "It is the perfect fighter. We should have built it." The Luftwaffe's greatest weapon had always been its pilots, men forged in the skies of Poland, France, and the Soviet Union. But now, attrition was eating them alive. With the P-51's long reach, no German airfield was beyond harassment. When the 4th and 357th Fighter Groups swept across northern Germany, they didn't just guard the bombers they hunted. Low over rail yards and highways, Mustangs strafed convoys, locomotives, even airfields where half-fueled 109 seconds were caught taxiing for takeoff. "We were ordered to destroy the Luftwaffe wherever it lived," recalled Colonel Don Blakesley, and we did. The results were catastrophic. In April alone, Germany lost nearly 1,000 aircraft. Some squadrons had fewer than 10 operational fighters. Experienced aces were killed or captured daily. In desperation, young boys from Hitler Youth Glider clubs were rushed into training programs, their instructors barely alive long enough to teach them. Meanwhile, the Allied bomber offensive grew bolder. Missions once cancelled due to insufficient escort range now launched regularly. Regensburg, Schweinfurt, Augsburg, even the synthetic fuel plants of Mersburg. From the cockpit of a B-17 named Heaven Sent, Sergeant Thomas Briggs watched through the plexiglass nose as tiny dots flickered ahead, P-51 seconds weaving lazily between the bombers. "They look like angels," his co-pilot murmured. And to the bomber crews, they were. Above Berlin, the once impregnable curtain of German fighters had thinned to a whisper. Even the fearsome Me-109 Kelvins and Flau 190D, rushed into production to counter the Mustang, could not change the tide. The Luftwaffe had lost the one thing it could never replace: control of the sky. In the aftermath of one dogfight, German engineers inspected a captured P-51D near Rechlin. They marveled at its laminar flow wing, its range-extending drop tanks, and the flawless marriage of American manufacturing with British engineering. One test pilot remarked bitterly, "They have built the Spitfire for giants." By summer 1944, as Allied armies gathered for the invasion of Normandy, the outcome was clear. The Luftwaffe could no longer stop the bombers nor protect the Reich's heartland. The P-51 Mustang had turned the air war into a one-sided affair, and for the first time in 5 years, the German people looked up and saw foreign aircraft ruling their skies. Section 4. The day the skies turned. June 21, 1944. Over the French countryside, the world was in motion, smoke columns rising from hedgerows, artillery flashing like distant lightning. Beneath the clouds, 1,000 ships lay off the Normandy coast. and above them, the sound that had once terrified bomber crews now filled German soldiers with dread, the steady, deep growl of the Mustang's Merlin engine. Captain Charles Chuck, Jaeger of the 357th Fighter Group, adjusted his oxygen mask as he banked over the channel. "Keep your eyes peeled," he called over the radio. "Flak's heavy near Caen." His flight of P-51Ds, silver and sleek, glinted in the morning sun as they climbed into formation. Below them, the invasion of Europe was unfolding. For the Luftwaffe, this was supposed to be the moment of reckoning, the chance to hurl the invader back into the sea. But the skies above the front belonged to the Allies. Every German aircraft that dared to rise from its airfield faced swarms of Mustangs and Thunderbolts, circling like hawks. At 12,000 feet over Argentan, a formation of foe 192nds broke through the haze, intent on striking the beaches. Jaeger's wingman spotted them first. "Bandits, 2 o'clock low." The Mustangs rolled in as one, sunlight flashing off their wings. Tracers stitched the sky. One 190 exploded in a flash of orange. Another spiraled earthward, trailing smoke. The radio crackled with calm, practiced voices, a deadly professionalism born of hundreds of hours over hostile skies. By now, the P-51 had become more than a fighter. It was a symbol of reach, of dominance, of inevitability. American pilots joked that their drop tanks were Berlin or bust tickets. The Luftwaffe called them the long-armed devils. In Berlin, the Ministry of Armaments received grim reports. Factories were in ruins, rail networks shattered, and synthetic fuel production, the lifeblood of Germany's mechanized war, was collapsing under constant air attack. Without fuel, even the most advanced jets, like the Me-262, could not save them. By the end of the summer, the numbers told the story. In 1943, Germany could put nearly 3,000 operational fighters into the air. By late 1944, barely 500 remained serviceable. The once mighty Luftwaffe was a shell, its veteran aces replaced by terrified boys with 20 hours of flight time. American pilots, once the hunted, now roamed freely from the Rhine to the Oder. They strafed trains, convoys, airfields, anything that moved. "We were kings of the sky," Jaeger recalled, "and we knew it." At Allied command, General Karl Spaatz studied reconnaissance photographs of Berlin's smoking ruins. "This," he said, "is what air supremacy looks like." For the men who had endured the dark years of unescorted missions, it was redemption. For the Luftwaffe, it was the end of an era, a slow, choking demise played out at 30,000 feet. And for the engineers who once believed their homeland was untouchable, it was an awakening. The skies above Berlin, once a sanctuary, had become a battlefield they could no longer win. The P-51 Mustang had done what no other aircraft had achieved. It reached into the very heart of the Reich and shattered its shield. When the war finally ended, captured Luftwaffe officers would still speak of it with awe and bitterness. "The day the Mustangs came," one remembered, "was the day we knew we had lost the war.